Have you ever turned your passion into a business only to find out that your business killed your passion? I'm Sammi Cohen, and this is Social Currency, a podcast that unpacks the stories that are shaping business, culture, and the intersection of the two. Welcome back to another episode of Social Currency. I am so excited for today's episode because we're actually going to do a deep dive into my personal small business journey, which is very different, obviously, from our normal episodes. But I think diving into this is super important for a few reasons. First, there's so much glamorization of businesses that have these massive exits or, acquisitions of some kind. And there's not as much focus on the small business that decides to shut down or fumbles for some reason. And I want to talk about my personal experience because number one, it will help you to learn a little bit more about me and perhaps my fascination with the consumer packaged goods industry, which is a lot of the video content that I cover on my social pages. I also think the learnings that I've gained have really helped shape my perspective on what it takes to be a founder, on business decisions, and also understanding when it's just the right time to walk away from a business. So let's start at the beginning. I first tried matcha in 2018, and matcha has been around for centuries. I'm not saying I'm the first one to try it by any means, but I had tried it in 2018, and right away I loved it. I'm kind of a caffeine addict. I drink coffee all the time. And for me, I loved the calm alertness that matcha gave me. And I was working at Aldi, the German grocery chain. I had seen that there is this opportunity and this boom of matcha that was coming to the US. And at this time, 7 years ago at this rate, matcha was big, but it wasn't as mainstream as it is today. So I saw that that was where the industry was going. And after I tried it and I knew that it was this different type of caffeine intake than coffee, I wanted a piece of that. Little side note or lesson that I've learned, and I'll sprinkle these throughout the story, but that is absolutely the wrong way you should think about starting a small business. You should not be coming at it from I love this, and now I'm going to just force it into the market. Usually the best ways to start a business are to recognize a pain point or a white space in the market, and then obviously go into it that way. But I did not do that. So I was also at a point in my life where I was about to go to business school. I had gotten accepted to UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business. And so I knew I wanted to go into my MBA program with a plan, with an idea that I could pursue. I get to Berkeley, I find a food scientist, I find the bottle manufacturer, I create the labels for the product, and I decide it's going to be a matcha latte. And there are a few different variations of it, and I am so excited about it, but I'm also fully in vision mode. I'm not fully thinking through the commercialization aspect, which is also lesson number 2. If you are developing any kind of product, you need to be thinking through not just the flashy vision of what it looks like, tastes like, feels like, but how is this going to get into market? And most importantly, what are the economics to support it getting into market? A few months in to being at Berkeley and developing the product, I enter this BevNet New Beverage Showdown. And it's very well known by people in the beverage space. And 2 years prior, a company by the name of Mother Beverage had won this pitch competition. Now, Mother Beverage today is actually called Poppy, and Poppy was just acquired for $1 billion. So there's that cool significance there. But I enter into the showdown and I end up making it to the finals. And mind you, everyone else who's in the showdown has their distribution already set. They're in grocery stores, they're selling, they have revenue coming in. I think this is the first time I'm ever admitting this. I think I lied on the application and said I was in a few grocery stores in the Bay Area, which was absolutely not true. I'd basically just formed the LLC and come up with the product. So this was not reality for me. But anywho, I put together the flashy presentation slide and had my whole shtick put together. And yeah, I made it to the final round. I did not win, which is actually a major blessing. I didn't realize that at the time, but it was. And I leave this pitch competition feeling inspired, but also feeling like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out this commercialization standpoint because this is going to be so expensive. It was a refrigerated matcha latte. And for anyone who knows anything about the grocery industry or beverage space, you're probably rolling your eyes because it is so crazy expensive to build and scale a refrigerated product. You have so many other or added costs that don't come into play when you're just selling a shelf-stable product. You need refrigerated trucks, refrigerated storage. There's just so much that goes into it. On top of that, I was selling it in glass bottles. Glass is notoriously very hard to transport anywhere, so it had a lot of nightmares baked in. After that pitch competition, I kind of go back to basics. I realized there's no way that I can afford to bring this to market, because also I was in my MBA program at the time. I wasn't mentally prepared to aggressively try and raise venture capital or angel money for this. And I obviously would not have been able to raise venture capital for this company that was basically an idea that didn't have any sales. I go back to basics. I say, okay, I'm going to switch the name of the product, which at the time was Mother Matcha, and I'm going to now call it Tanner's Tea, and it's going to be a concentrate. And the cool thing about a concentrate, and this is me approaching it the right way, is that for fast service restaurants like a Panera, right? If they're going to serve a matcha, the person behind the counter isn't going to whisk the matcha in the little whisking bowl and then do the hot water after that, because it's messy, it takes too much time, and they're focused on getting food and beverages out as quickly as possible. So the idea for the concentrate was that this is going to save these food establishments time. It was still very high quality, ceremonial grade matcha. But for me, that was a really key element, was serving these very specific customers, any kind of fast service restaurant or even an office space, and allow them to make these drinks faster. And that really resonated because it wasn't very hard to sell into these office spaces or restaurants. They immediately got it. They understood, okay, this is going to save us time, and it's what our customers or users are already looking for. So that was great. And at that point, I had found a manufacturer after probably sending north of 100 emails to every sort of manufacturer in the US. The issue with finding a manufacturer when you're a very small food company is the fact that they all work on these minimum order quantities. And I was coming at it saying, hey, can I have 2,000 units as my first run? And they would basically laugh at me of like, no, we have our smallest run size at 200,000. So I eventually ended up getting my first manufacturer by driving down, they're based in Pomona, and physically showing up at their office and saying, please work with me. I promise this is going to be a massive company someday. And who knows what else I said. But to my surprise and absolute delight, they ended up saying yes. At that point, I have the manufacturer locked in. I have a new product that seems to be doing well. At least it's not hard for me to get it into the customers' doors. And at that point, I end up going to an LA trade show and I get an account called Jones on Third. And if you're from the LA area, you likely know Jones on Third. It's a very famous restaurant/deli. And I'm thinking I'm going to be off to the races. This is now 2019, and I'm supposed to graduate the following year from Berkeley. I think to myself, this is going to be a full business that I'm going to run and eventually build out a team. But then March 2020 rolls around. And at the time, I'm in 18 different accounts, from the different restaurants to offices and all that. And overnight, I get emails from almost all of my customers that are saying, hey, we're going to pause our orders for the foreseeable future because with this pandemic, we don't know how long it's going to last. And basically our customers have fallen to zero overnight. I probably didn't sleep for 4 nights after hearing that news, because this was what my plan was. I had just gone to this very expensive school and was graduating with an MBA, and this was going to be my path. But overnight, it wasn't. So I go back to the drawing board and think, okay, I need an actual job. And I end up getting a role at Amazon because of my past retail experience and tech experience and all that. And so when I get the job at Amazon, I'm truly thinking that Amazon is going to be my day job. I'm going to do the Tanner's Tea at night and on the weekends, and I will scale the matcha business until I'm able to essentially say bye to Amazon and do it full time. And obviously the pandemic lasted longer than really any of us thought. Also, I want to pause and just talk about where I was mentally in my life as well. I think at that stage, I was so caught up on this image of me being the matcha girl and scaling the matcha business. And that's what everyone from business school knew me as. And my friends and my family would always ask, how is the matcha company doing? And even though it was a stagnant business that really didn't grow from 2020 to 2022, I had so much of my personal identity wrapped up in it that I had started to get this inkling that it was no longer really my calling or the thing that I was the most passionate about, but I was so afraid to walk away. And I think this is probably something that plagues many people, especially when they're building side hustles, small businesses that they realize aren't really going the direction that they hoped it would. But then there's this fear of telling people in your life that it's not working out. Anyway, we get to 2022. I have this inkling that Tanner's Tea isn't going to be the massive business that I hoped it was going to be, but I'm still doing it because it's a side business and I'm honestly probably afraid at that point to start winding it down. In 2022, that's when I put out my first TikTok video. And right away, after that very first video, I feel so deeply in my soul that this is what I'm meant to do. And it's not like I was monetizing it or I had any brands reaching out to me. I mean, I basically had 0 followers, but I just knew, and going back to the delusion, I knew it was going to turn into something. I am then doing my Amazon job and building Tanner's Tea, or rather just continuing with Tanner's Tea. I wouldn't say I was necessarily building it, but I'm doing all 3 things for years. I do that for 2 full years, all of it. I am so exhausted because, I mean, working at Amazon is already hard enough, but then balancing 2 other things that are taking up a lot of your time and mind share was really challenging. Last year, I decided to shut down the business. Even though I knew in my heart it was very much the right time, I had started monetizing also my social media stuff, which was also a reason why I knew I could start walking away. But I think it was a really tough identity shift for me too. And there was this part of me that felt ashamed to tell people that I was shutting it down, which is actually crazy when I say it out loud, but that's honestly how I felt. So I want to talk about some of my learnings from the journey. I think this personal identity shift that happens when you become a founder, there's so much of your time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, and tears that goes into building something from the ground up that so many founders have their identity completely intertwined. And that was exactly what happened with me. And honestly, it's probably how I am right now with everything that I'm doing with social media. But I think this reframe has really been critical. And I would encourage anyone who's in a similar boat to do the same with reframing shutting down a business as the best possible learning opportunity that you can possibly get. I tell everyone, even though I have an MBA from Berkeley, that I didn't learn about business through the MBA. Sure, I learned basic business fundamentals and maybe how to read a P&L a little bit better and understand some interesting nuances. But when it comes to building a business and truly understanding how to do it, you learn by doing. You don't learn by reading or listening or talking to people about it, right? So I choose to see my Matcha chapter as something that I'm so proud of, and especially with my passion for the consumer packaged goods space. And that's everything from food and beverage to makeup to any kind of physical product, right? It really made my passion for CPG so much stronger because I physically did it. And now when I talk about companies in the CPG space of what they're doing, I have this lens on it that I think is so much sharper and stronger because of my own personal experience in the space. And my last note is, I think whenever you close a chapter, it literally creates room for the next chapter to emerge. And the time, the energy that I was spending towards building or supporting this matcha company was literally time that I wasn't able to work on a video or support my social media. The day that I shut down and officially stopped selling my matcha, I had actually a really big sense of relief because I knew that my passion and what I was really excited about on the social media side could actually be filled now fully instead of doing these different types of businesses that were all taking up several sections of my mind share. That is it for today's episode. I would really love to hear your thoughts on all of that. And if you are in the middle of deciding whether or not to start a small business, continue running it, or maybe shut it down, you can always feel free to DM me or message me about your experience, and I'd love to chat with you about it. So thanks for listening and see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Social Currency. I've been wanting to launch this show for so long. I can't tell you how excited I am to do this and how thrilled I am that you're actually here listening. It means the world to me. If you liked what you heard today, please rate and review the podcast because it massively helps to support the work I do to bring the show to life. And if you want to keep up with the hottest business lore in real time, follow me on Instagram at Sammi Cohen Talks and subscribe to my newsletter, Social Currency, which is linked in the show notes. Social Currency is a production of Social Currency Media and Money News Network. The podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Sammi Cohen. Social Currency is produced by the Money News Network team. See you next time.